Good afternoon. Today is February 24th, and this is the study session for the City of Prescott. Roll call, please.
Mayor Rusing.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Fruworth.
Here.
Councilwoman Frederickson.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
I am here.
Councilman Grady.
Here.
Councilman Ruby.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Councilman Gehring is excused from the meeting.
Next item.
Presentation and discussion regarding the City of Prescott Historic Preservation Master Plan update.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. My name is Alex Bramlett. I'm the planning manager with the Community Development Department. And I'm here this afternoon really to just kind of talk about the Historic Preservation Master Plan, give a little bit of laying of context, but we are currently wanting to update this Historic Preservation Master Plan, which I'll just call the Master Plan from here on out. And so I think it's a good time, especially with some projects we've had over the last several years. We've at the same time been slowly updating it on a staff level. It feels like a perfect opportunity to get some feedback and direction, and our hope is to update the whole plan, get a consultant on board. I'll go over some timelines here in a little bit, and just really get some feedback from you all and direction on what you all see, how you feel. I'll show some kind of general outlines and just take it from there. So to starters, there's two different district types. There's first the local historic preservation districts, and that is what this map's showing. It's the first map I printed and shown for you, and I can also pull it up and blow it up larger if needed as we continue on. There's 13 total local historic preservation districts, and so these are all on a local level, and they are regulated by our Prescott Preservation Commission. So if you are doing any kind of building permit, adding on to your structure, a demo, anything like that that's exterior, it is under our Prescott Preservation Commission jurisdiction because it's on a local level. There is some overlap to local versus national, but the local ones are still regulated by the PPC. If you get a building permit in for a property that's solely in the national, it's not going to go to the Prescott Preservation Commission, only these properties located in the local districts. So similarly, here's the national. Again, you'll see some kind of overlay so the obvious one is the Courthouse Plaza. District is also a national district, but a local. And so on a national level, here's different things that the State Historic Preservation Office is going to have the most say on if you're doing an addition, adding a story, remodeling the whole thing, levels like that. We will add in info on our building permit level, but it's not going to be we need to stop, we can't issue a permit, you need to go to Preservation Commission because it's not in the local district. There are also 13 national districts at this time captured under our Historic Preservation Master Plan. So here's some of the purpose that's pulled from the plan. The plan is from 1998. It has not been updated since that time, so it's going on almost 30 years. It is interesting, though, a lot of the purpose from the plan itself is really applicable and relevant now, and it's largely just trying to connect the plan and the ordinances. And so the ordinances, I'm going to show, I don't know if many people have an actual printed copy. The plan is rather large. So this is the whole plan that covers all the local, the national districts that we've shown kind of on those maps. This is the guideline document for anything in historic preservation. At the same time, we then have the ordinances, and those are the regulatory authorities. So the local districts have an ordinance associated with it, and that's what gives the Prescott Preservation jurisdiction over those areas. And so the plan is trying to bridge the gap between those two. It's trying to establish criteria to avoid arbitrary decisions by the government. It's trying to lead to current and future property owners and residents to know in advance how Prescott intends to grow and what the community wants to protect. It's trying to address issues relating to zoning, traffic patterns, tourism, design development patterns, and pressures that may impact the historic preservation districts. And again, this is from the 1998 plan. Some of the goals in order to implement the purpose is to establish and preserve and maintain sites and structures that serve as significant visible reminders of Prescott's past, to preserve the character and livability of Prescott's neighborhood, to integrate historic preservation more fully into our planning system. So we're using this as an active document, not just, we have historic preservation districts, but what does that mean? And we want to contribute to the economic development and vitality of Prescott by encouraging restoration work and adaptively reusing these buildings to improve their viability and economic contribution by promoting tourism related to historic resources. So as I mentioned at this time, we, for several years, dating back to a few preservation specialists ago, we've started to update the master plan, updating outdated language, just kind of generally giving it a refresh. It's been at a staff level, so it's been taking some time. We don't have a ton of staff to do this, so we've been kind of slowly doing this over the course of several years. So at this point, with kind of the plan update that we have at this point, and given the last few projects that we've had, I think we all are looking for, my goal is to have a new historic preservation master plan that's updated, and out of that to have design criteria for each of the local preservation districts that are clearer and more helpful for, you know, as a property owner to understand what's required, for staff to understand what is needed to get it through the process. So that's where we currently are, and that's where we're wanting to do a check-in on next steps. So what we have is, what we'd like to do, we are putting it on the fiscal year 2027 budget for getting a consultant on board. And we would like to start that process kind of on the sooner side in March, get the RFP completed, in April and June, get it sent out for the RFP, get proposals in, and ideally by the time July 1st rolls around, have a consultant selected and onboarded and ready to hit the ground running. So we would like them to review the plan that we've updated so far, make it consistent, make it clean language, kind of just give it a fresh look. So we'll want them to revitalize that. And further, we also want them to help with our public participation plan and timeline. And further, then we want them to review the overall consistency, reformatting, and then the plan itself, but then those design guidelines so that it really is a cleaned up, refreshed staff. You all, PPC, the public knows, and it's clear what is needed to get a permit in these local preservation districts. So those are the kind of the hopeful things we want them to work on. In terms of public participation, those will be the first few months of the onboarding. And then after that, kind of towards the end of this year, is really doing all the public outreach and the open houses, community events. How we kind of see it working, I'm gonna backtrack here real quick. There's a lot of districts. This is the national and this is the local. And so I don't think it would be possible to do an open house per district. There's 13 of each. And so what we kind of thought is to do 3 total open houses in geographic different regions to kind of help the neighborhoods in that area and talk about all the different changes that are going to happen. So kind of breaking it down, it's a large document, it's a lot to digest. We do not want to do it all at the same time. We want to break it down into 3 sections so it's more manageable for the public to understand, for PPC when we bring it through, and then ultimately for you all when you're adopting it. So in January through May, we'll be going through, public hearing, the public outreach process. We'll be doing all of those community events. So come the new year is when we want to pivot to, hopefully we've got a pretty good document outline. We have our design guidelines set pretty well. And then we want to pivot over to starting with, again, the 3 big sections, starting with the Prescott Preservation Commission, bringing the first section through, having them look, get feedback, and then we'll be bringing that once we get it cleaned up and set with the Prescott Preservation Commission, bringing that section forward to City Council. And then at the next step would be the second section. We want to just bring it all in sections so that by the time we get through everything, ideally by June 2027, maybe July or August, we are ready to bring it forward to Council for final adoption. So that's kind of the rough draft we have. We do want to get that consultant on board and get feedback from them, obviously, on what worked best from what they've experienced in other communities updating the Historic Preservation Master Plan. So at this time, I just kind of wanted to check in, get some other feedback. Are there other components that you want to see? At the end of the day, staff's deliverables, like I said, is updated master plan, updated ordinances, and then further, I would like for each local preservation district to have a staff report template of all the design guidelines outlined so we can just fill it in and send that over to PPC for review.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. It's a lot of work after 30 years of having this wonderful historic plan in place. Unfortunately, recently, there's been a hiccup in our plan, and we need to close some of the loopholes. And I'm talking about the historic district around the courthouse. We had an out-of-town investor bought a property on Whiskey Row, and it was considered a non-contributor. His property was not designated historic, and that surprised me until I saw we have a map here, and approximately half the properties around the historic district around the courthouse are non-contributors. So one thing that attracts everyone to Prescott is our historic charm, and we need to protect this area especially, or everything is going to be demoed. So I would just like to ask you that we close some of these loopholes and protect our historic district, especially around the courthouse. And number one, eliminate all the non-contributors. Just say, okay, if your building's 50 years old, you're a contributor, and it contributes to the historic district, and everything applies to you, because that was one of the loopholes that was exploited. And believe me, I am a big supporter of private property rights. And that's another thing that was apparently an issue, because the Goldwater Institute got involved on the private property rights issue. So we have to make sure that any changes we make protect private property rights. But then also, if you're in the historic district, then you have to abide by the historic district rules and organization. Another loophole was parking. Now we have a 50-room hotel on Whiskey Row with no parking, no place to park. I can't even imagine the chaos that's going to cause once it gets built. And so we're going to have to deal with that, but we cannot let that happen again. So I think that's one of the things we have to look at, is we have to codify it in the ordinance, the historic district ordinance, and make sure it doesn't supersede our regular parking ordinances, because that's what happened. The parking was relaxed in the historic district to encourage more pedestrian traffic and to prevent buildings from being torn down. But as a result, like I said, now we have a 50-room hotel with 50 cars that are going to be on the street overnight, during the day, with no place to park. So also another issue was height. It's when I was looking at the district, it's kind of a sliding scale, mass, height, which is very important. But we need to have the 3 stories and a certain height. I don't know if it's 48 feet or 57 feet, something that is easy to understand, and it's going to be codified. This is how tall it's going to be. So those are just some of my ideas, because if we don't make these changes, this Whiskey Row project has set a precedent. And now we're going to have all the other investors and out-of-town owners and maybe local owners who are going to say, you know what? I don't think this is the highest and best use. I'm going to tear this thing down and put up an apartment complex with no parking, because that can happen under our old rules. So also another thing we haven't addressed is the entertainment district. There's an entertainment district overlay on the downtown area, not just the historic area, courthouse area. And it's pretty large. And I've gotten mixed messages, that was just for liquor licenses. But according to my research, it also relaxed the parking in that whole area. So we've got a lot of work to do. I agree with the hiring a consultant, the expert, to help us out. but we just need to close these loopholes if we're going to preserve our historic districts. I don't see any speakers here on my board. Are there any up here yet? Let me
Yes,
see.
Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Gambogi, you're first.
Point of order, Madam Mayor, the parking deck is there for the hotel parking. But I think most importantly, even if Councilwoman Fruworth got the real Liberty Bell to come to Prescott, someone would argue that it's not historic. So I agree with the mayor that we need to have very specific guidelines so we don't get into the emotional arguments that we got in with regard to that hotel.
Okay, Mary Frederickson.
Thank you. Alex, you mentioned that part of this process for your staff and for the consultant eventually includes the guidelines as well as the master plan itself. I know when the Plaza Hotel was being discussed, one of the issues that would come up would be a variance between what the guidelines said and what the master plan said, arguably different. And I think that was exploited to some extent that, well, the guidelines are just guidelines, it's really the master plan. So I know when hopefully when you, your staff, and the consultants go through this process, that they ensure that the guidelines and the master plan, and eventually the ordinance that refers to, which I think the existing ordinance refers to the guidelines specifically, all are in agreement, all say the same thing.
Thank you. Lois.
Thank you. I was, when I was onboarded back in 2023, we were going to get this work done in my first year on council, and now I'm entering my third year on council, and we haven't got it done. So my biggest concern is that you resource this correctly with the RFP. I don't want to see these dates slip. In fact, I'd like all of them moved up by a month. And the reason being is because I'd really like to have this ahead of us before we, in June, as a council, we pivot and focus heavily on the budget and all sorts of other things. So please do not slip and get the resources you need to get this done. And I have that sense of urgency because of the experience that we've all had this past year, that we wished we had had this done sooner. So I'm willing to invest what we need to get this thing done on this time, number one. Secondly, I want to make sure that we have our legal department totally lockstep in this timeline with you, legal reviewing all the documents along the way, because I think it's really important that we learned also this year about being defendable and being clear and ambiguous. And so if I was going to say what my goals are, and I'm thinking much bigger than the goals that are outlined here. I want documents that are clear and unambiguous. I want defendable. I want it completed on time. And if we have to prioritize anything, then let's get the courthouse district done first. Because every day that slips by, we run the risk of another experience that we've just had and that the public isn't helpful with. So prioritizing that. And then the only thing I had feedback into the goals that you had on slide 5 is, I know it's implied, but I want to be crystal clear so we're not accused later on of scope creep. I want to preserve the character and livability of Prescott's historic neighborhoods. And we have to insert the word historic because we're not going after every other neighborhood in this community. So I think that just adds a lot of clarity and stops the people from spinning out of control that we're becoming the HOA of the entire town. And then the other thing for me I thought was interesting in your third goal was to integrate historic preservation more fully into Prescott's planning system. And that just led me to say, why are you saying that? And what's the opportunities with our planning system? So you intrigued me with that comment. So love to hear more. And I think that was my notes. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Grady.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So then the downtown has an entertainment district, but then the Historic Preservation District of Courthouse Plaza, that's not a national designation, that's a local designation?
There is a national and local for the courthouse plaza.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. And then I remember hearing at one point from Chelsea that we're also putting a priority on some neighborhood plans that haven't been updated for a while. How's that all being coordinated?
So I think we're going to get through the general plan. We also have the land development code on the docket, and then we do have our neighborhood plans that we kind of want to pivot to that, similar to the historic preservation master plan, are just old and can use a refresh. Maybe they're not needed, maybe they need expanding, kind of just taking a look at those, but it's not going to be related to the historic preservation master plan. It'll be a different, separate process.
Okay. And the land development code, is that applicable to some of the concerns raised about the downtown too? So we get done with this code and we haven't completed the land development code, are we still out of balance?
Normally, the historic preservation master plan is the guiding document, whereas the ordinances are the implementation.
Okay.
Similarly, our general plan is the long-term guiding document. Our LDC is the implementation of it.
Okay.
So we want to get through the general plan to set the future, lay out the bigger picture, and then from there we'll be kind of developing and updating our land development code in accordance with the general plan. So it's kind of a derivative of it. We're implementing it in alignment with the goals of the larger plan for the city.
So you'll also be updating it then in light of this master plan too?
Well, we won't be probably starting that until the general plan and the this plan are close to the end. We're trying to start that next year. So
Okay.
it won't be near completion until probably 2028.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
I just have a question for legal. Since this historic district plan won't be ready for over a year, is there any way we can make some amendments in the current plan, in our LDC, concerning parking so that we can require on-site parking or some kind of parking so we don't have this situation happening again?
Yeah. In fact, in March, you have something coming to council related to parking in the downtown business district.
Okay.
I will say in parking, it's sort of a twofold question because there is information about parking in both the ordinance and the historic master plan for the downtown or the courtyard plaza. And basically what the master plan says is we don't want parking.
Yes.
And that became codified
Right.
in our
Right.
downtown business district zoning. But we do have a proposed amendment for that, and that will be coming to council next month.
And it's also in our general plan, our draft of our general plan that we're working on. So we need to take a second look at that and maybe change that. My suggestion about the non-contributors that are exempt from being historic, which is what happened with the Whiskey Row Hotel. I mean, is that something that unilaterally we can change and just say, if you got a building that's in the historic district around the courthouse, if it's older than 50 years, then, that's historic and you have to go by the guidelines.
There is things we can do on that regard. And it comes down to the definition of a contributing property. And so the definition of a contributing property will be looked at and can be amended as we go through this.
Okay, and then my only other concern is height. Maybe make sure that there's clear, like Lois said, clear direction as to height, because the old city hall was obviously non-conforming, but it was, to me, it was over 50 years old, so it was historic. But we tore it down, we're building a new hotel there, and it's three stories, but that was one of our questions, was everything going to be over 3 stories or almost 3 stories? That was kind of a gray area. And we need to make sure we know what the height's going to be so we don't have a skyscraper downtown.
Yeah, so in terms of the height, there is a few layers. Our baseline zoning district height, so this is we're talking the Courthouse Plaza. It's the downtown business zoning district. The height maximum there is 50 feet. Then enter the historic preservation master plan, and that is a 48-foot height. And so I think it's just the nature of an older document. It's not things that this document intended to come across. And so it set a height of the 48 feet, and the old City Hall corner, Cortez building, and then the Whiskey Row Hotel are that 48 feet or under. It was more the 3 to 4 or 48 feet stories. And so those are the ambiguities we'd like to address as part of the update to this plan.
Oh, and I'm glad you brought up the zoning, because I was looking at the zoning map, and we have like 20 zones around just in the historic area. I mean, it's quite the hodgepodge. Is there any way we can have more of a uniform zoning ordinance around the plaza so it's not all these different zoning areas in that little rectangle?
The whole Courthouse Plaza zoning, that whole area and kind of beyond, is all the downtown business zoning district. So it's all the same zoning district. And then the preservation acts as an overlay. So like I said, the zoning baseline, the downtown business was a 50-foot height. Well, then you add in the historic preservation overlay and it's 48. So that's more limiting. So that's what we stuck to. So it's just an overlay of the zoning, and they kind of work in tandem to each other. So the whole Courthouse Plaza, though, is all within the downtown business zoning district.
Downtown business zoning district. Okay, thank you. Let's see, Mr. Grady? Okay, and Mr. Ruby?
I just wanted to get a clarification on the difference between a contributor and a non-contributor on the federal registration.
So a contributor is one that has gone and actually done the application process. You can submit an application through the State Historic Preservation Office. It's a nomination process. So they've gone through that process to say this is a contributor to a certain time period or the district itself. And it's reviewed. It's an application that's submitted and reviewed. And then if you're granted it, it becomes the contributor. So not all buildings in a district are contributors, as you can see on the plan.
And are there any legal ramifications to being a contributor or a non-contributor?
No, and regardless of whether you're a contributor or not, if you're in a local district and you're adding on to your structure, you have to go through the Prescott Preservation Commission and meet the design guidelines. And it's the same from our perspective. It is the same. It's more of a kind of state historic preservation distinction. We don't actually nominate one to be a contributor. It's handled at a larger level.
Lois?
Thank you. One other thing I like about the last goal on page slide 5 is to contribute to the economic development and vitality by encouraging restoration work. And, you know, as we go out of the courthouse district and into the business district, as we learned this year on 2 projects that I can recall, the one on Cortez Street, as well as the one using the old county land, health building land on Marina Street. We learned that if you really need to significantly restore a complex and make it pay out, is we have to be a little bit flexible in their ability to add units and make the whole thing pay out. So that's one thing that, for me, how do we provide, where we can, flexibility so that current owners don't let their property degrade to the point that it's beyond salvaging. And this whole economic development vitality, it's a great goal, and I think there's going to be some black, white, and gray zones as you work your way through this. And I think the more that we can keep as much of the restoration in original form, with providing some flexibility to make it pay out in today's economic struggles, I'm definitely open to being flexible on.
I think to a degree it's design. It's organically a little flexible. What one person thinks looks good is different than the next person. So it really is trying to strike a balance of clear for the applicant, for everyone involved to know what to expect, to know what's required, but at the same time allowing for that flexibility because it's design and it's not going to be black and white. That's where I'm hoping definitely an architectural historian or whomever we get on board will be really helpful and enlightening in what that may look like. Maybe there's a different point system we can use, or maybe there's a different way we can approach reviewing and analyzing these projects that help create clearness but give that flexibility too.
I think Mr. Gambogi, did you have something to contribute?
Yeah, I think staff has presented us with an overall good plan. We got timelines and topics that are going to be covered. I'm a little concerned that we're micromanaging here. You got into topics about parking. Parking is at the parking deck. The parking deck top floor is empty except for special events like the rodeo. I don't think we need to get into that today. I think we need to give them a kudos for a good presentation and a good plan, and then as the plan develops, we need to provide input.
Thank you. Lois?
Yeah, I heard what you said, Alex, in response to me. And for me, there's a fine line between the courthouse district and the rest of the business district. The rest of the business district, and to some extent, even the Preservation Commission agreed to a fourth story for the new City Hall, the Assembly at Old City Hall, that building. Because there's just, to build an almost new building or to retrofit it to today's standards that people want to live in or visit, there's so much more cost than what we faced back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So I appreciated when the Preservation Commission did that. I appreciated when they leaned in on some Juliet balconies that were not there, because you're trying to make things attractive that people want to pay top dollar and come to Prescott and feel good about their ROI. So I'm just highlighting that it goes beyond necessarily just design. It also comes down to a win-win from the city's point of view as well as the business's point of view, who's investing money, that they get a good return on their investment as well. And so I just wanted to highlight that if that nuance wasn't clear. Thank you.
Mary?
Thank you. Alex, when you were discussing the zoning for the Courthouse Plaza area and the overlay of the Historic Preservation Master Plan, I heard you talking about the 50 feet versus the 48 feet, which is in the master plan. But I just wanted to clarify in my own head, if there are two structures, here the zoning and then the master plan overlay, is the more restrictive element running the day?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Now, is this new plan, is it going to replace the old one completely? Are we rescinding the old one, or are we just going to combine them? And
I think it will. I mean, we've updated we've started with the existing plan and we're updating it. And so we're not kind of starting completely over. Mm-hmm. We're building off of it. We're updating, we're refreshing and doing things like that. So at the end of the day, though, we'll have one plan. It will be a different one than this, but a new one. And, but based off of the existing plan.
yeah. And I would suggest that we work closely with legal on this and get their input. And I just think our goal is to keep our historic district around the courthouse vibrant and attractive, maintaining its charm, but make it functional and make it a good investment for people that want to contribute financially to the area, because the last thing we want is a blighted, vacant downtown, which happens in so many historic areas. And we've been lucky so far. You know, we have some vacancies, but I think we're doing pretty good. So I just wanted to thank everybody, the committee, community development. Thank you for taking on this task. I really appreciate it. Any other comments from anybody? Okay.
You do have public comment, Mayor?
I was just going to ask. I see some people out there just dying to make public comments. So let's go.
Rick Sprain.
Good afternoon. My name is Rick Sprain. I am the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I want to thank you for taking this on. It's been years past due that this has been done. Myself and Kat Moody, who was a preservation specialist years ago, probably started this almost 10 years ago to update it, and it's finally going, so thank you. I do like the idea of having somebody from the outside take a look at this, but I'd also like having, if we could do Historic Preservation Commission be part of that. I don't see this, I mean, it's wonderful, but I'd rather have more input before 2027 when it comes before us. And I think Mayor Pro Tem, you've got this nailed. Any problems I saw, you guys brought it up already. This is something that needs to have been addressed years ago, and I would like to see it nipped in the bud before something else happens again. I can't speak for everybody on the commission, but I'm pretty sure they all appreciate what you guys are doing and support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael King.
Not as tall as Mr. Sprague. My name is Michael King. I'm a 30-year resident of Prescott. I've served several years on the commission here as well as other activities in our community, other boards and commissions. I just wanted to say I wholeheartedly support the goals of updating the historical master plan. I support the goals, I support the purpose, I support the idea that you're going to go to a third party to bring in the skills we need to hang on to follow the timelines that are brought up here today. I think that's a good way to approach this whole thing. And I offer myself, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the commission, but we have 4 people here on the commission. We love our work. People don't always love what we do, but we love our work. And we're here, I'll speak for myself, but I know that we want to be engaged and help move this along and be involved in the support that is asked of us. And so thank you for the time. I fully support the goals and the purpose of what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Connie Cantelmi.
Good morning, Council. Well, afternoon now. Great to be here. Many of you, I know all of you, and I know you know that my background has been in this, and I've been very involved, not only where you sit, but having worked with our community development department over the 20-year span that I've restored a lot of historic properties. I take this very seriously. And Kathy, Mayor, I wanted to really applaud you, because what we do need to do is exactly what you're doing. We need to go outside of this city into a professional firm that understands historic preservation. Historic preservation is a discipline. It's well studied all throughout the country, and if we're not careful here in Prescott, we're going to become non-conforming. Now, I want to tell you what non-conforming really means. On a countrywide level, with the property, you have a historic property. Think of St. Michael's down there with the gargoyle heads on the top and the stacked crown molding, the precast. Once those historic buildings, like the one we have right here next to the Hawaiian barbecue place, once they're stripped of their ornamentation, they become non-conforming. It takes a consultant to come in and assess the building of what's missing and how it was bastardized, if you will. Once it becomes stripped of all historic application, it becomes non-conforming. The thing that we have to watch out here for in our city is a new thing, fairly new since I've been in it, is what they call adaptive reuse. Now, I'm all for adaptively reusing these properties, but they have to be kept in some sort of conformity to blend in with our historic preservation district. But it is very strict in our guidelines and throughout the country. Any new development that comes into the area cannot copy historic properties. They can blend, they can look great, they can have some ornamentation, but they are not meant to mimic the historic preservation of our district. So we do have to have a specialist that understands this in a firm that understands. They will also be helpful for anybody that comes downtown in the historic district that wants to develop a property. They can help guide them to how they can kind of skim that thin line of producing a good property that's going to blend with our history, but not mimic or copy it. So I do applaud you. Take it outside, get the representation and the knowledge base that we really do need. After all, we are the oldest community as the territorial capital. We deserve this, so thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, any more discussion from our council members? Okay, all righty. Well, thank you very much. I think everyone's got a good start here, and this meeting is adjourned.